How are you feeling right now?
It's a simple question, but for a lot of English learners, it opens up one of the most difficult parts of the language.
Not because the grammar is hard, but because talking about emotions in a second language requires a kind of precision and vulnerability that goes beyond vocabulary.
You don't just need to know the words. You need to know how to use them without sounding too intense, too flat, or too dramatic.
And today, that's exactly what we're going to explore.
I'm James.
And I'm Maya. Welcome back to the Maya and James podcast, where we help you practice real English through real conversations.
Today's episode is about emotional language in English, how to express how you feel in a natural, measured, and authentic way.
We'll talk about the most useful emotional vocabulary, how to describe feelings with the right level of intensity, and how to respond when someone shares something emotional with you.
Plus, vocabulary, phrasal verbs, shadowing, and speaking practice.
Let's get into it.
Maya, I think one of the real challenges here is that learners often only know the most extreme versions of emotional vocabulary in English.
Yes, exactly. They know happy and sad, maybe angry and scared. But real emotional language exists on a spectrum. And the middle of that spectrum, the subtle words, the nuanced ones, that's where most of real conversation lives.
So what do you mean by the spectrum?
Well, think about happiness, for example. There's a big difference between content, pleased, happy, delighted, and overjoyed. Each of those words describes a different intensity of positive feeling. Content is quiet and calm. Overjoyed is intense and almost overwhelming.
And using the right word matters because it makes your communication more precise. If you say you're overjoyed about something small, it sounds exaggerated. If you say you're fine about something that's clearly affected you deeply, it sounds dismissive of your own experience.
Exactly. The word you choose signals how much this thing matters to you, and people pick up on that. Matching your emotional vocabulary to your actual feeling is one of the most authentic things you can do in conversation.
Can you give us the spectrum for a few different emotions?
Yes, let's do a few. For sadness, you might feel a little down, low, sad, upset, heartbroken, or devastated. Each one is heavier than the last.
And for anxiety or worry?
You might feel a bit on edge, uneasy, worried, anxious, stressed, or overwhelmed. Again, a natural progression from mild to intense.
And for anger?
Mildly irritated, annoyed, frustrated, angry, furious, or livid. Livid is extremely strong and would only be appropriate in quite serious situations.
This is so useful because it shows learners that they don't have to jump straight to the most dramatic word. There are always more precise options in between.
And those in-between words are actually where most authentic emotional expression lives, because most of the time, feelings are not at the extreme end of the scale.
Now, let's talk about how to describe emotions in full sentences, because even if you know the right word, putting it into a natural sentence can be tricky.
Yes, one really useful structure is, I've been feeling a bit, followed by the emotion. For example, I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately, or I've been feeling quite low this week.
And why does that structure work so well?
A few reasons. First, I've been feeling suggests it's been going on for a little while, which is more honest than saying I feel, as if it's just this single moment. Second, the words a bit or quite act as natural hedges. They scale the emotion appropriately. And third, adding lately or this week gives context without oversharing.
So it's honest, specific, and socially calibrated all at once.
Exactly. And it invites the other person to ask more if they want to, without demanding that they do.
That's an important point. In English conversation, especially in British English, there's a kind of etiquette around emotional sharing. You open the door a little and let the other person choose whether to step in.
Yes. You don't usually unload everything immediately. You share a little, see how the other person responds, and then decide whether to share more.
And that's actually a really valuable social skill in any language. What about responding when someone else shares their feelings with you? That can be just as hard as expressing your own.
Absolutely. And I think learners often freeze in those moments because they want to say exactly the right thing. They're worried about being insensitive or saying something unhelpful.
So what does a good response look like?
The most important thing is to acknowledge what the person has said before you do anything else. Don't immediately jump to advice, solutions, or positive reframing. Just acknowledge.
And what does acknowledgement sound like?
Things like, "That sounds really difficult. I can imagine that's been hard. I'm sorry to hear that. That makes a lot of sense." Or simply, "Thank you for telling me."
Those phrases do something very powerful. They validate the other person's experience. They say, I hear you. What you're feeling is real, and it matters.
And that's what most people actually need in those moments. Not advice, not a solution, just to feel heard.
And once you've acknowledged, then you can gently ask if they'd like to talk more or offer support if it feels appropriate.
Yes, a phrase like, "Do you want to talk about it?" or "Is there anything I can do?" is warm without being intrusive. It leaves the choice with the other person.
Which again goes back to that core principle we keep returning to in this podcast. Good communication is about making the other person feel seen and respected. Let's talk about one more challenge. The difference between talking about emotions professionally versus personally.
Yes, because the context changes everything. In a personal conversation with a close friend, you might say, "I'm absolutely exhausted, and I feel like everything is falling apart." That's honest and open and appropriate between close friends.
But in a professional setting, the same feeling might be expressed as, I've been finding things quite challenging recently, or it's been a busy period and I'm feeling a bit stretched.
Same underlying feeling, very different language. And knowing how to adjust is part of communication fluency.
And learners who can do this, who can express the same emotion at different registers depending on the context, they're operating at a really high level of English.
Exactly. It's not just about knowing the words, it's about knowing when to use them, at what intensity, and in what setting.
And that awareness builds over time through listening, observation, and practice.
Yes, you start to notice how people around you talk about their feelings, what they say at work versus at home, what they share in public versus in private. And slowly, your own emotional vocabulary in English becomes richer and more contextually aware.
And I want to add one more thing before we move to vocabulary. For learners who come from cultures where expressing emotion openly is less common, talking about feelings in English can feel especially exposing.
Yes, and that's completely valid. You don't have to share everything. Being emotionally expressive in English doesn't mean being emotionally transparent at all times.
The goal is simply to have the language available when you need it, so that when you do want to express something, you have the vocabulary, the structures, and the confidence to do so naturally.
And you're always in control of how much you share. Learning the language of emotions doesn't oblige you to use it all the time, it just gives you the choice.
That's a really empowering way to think about it. Let's look at 4 vocabulary words from today.
The first word is nuanced. Something nuanced has small, subtle differences that are important to understand. For example, her emotional vocabulary was very nuanced. She never just said she was sad. She always found the exact right word. Nuanced.
The second word is validate. To validate someone means to confirm that their feelings or experiences are real and acceptable. For example, a simple phrase like, "That sounds really hard," can validate someone's experience powerfully. Validate.
The third word is register. In language, a register is the level of formality or style you use depending on the situation. For example, she switched her register naturally when moving from a personal conversation to a professional one. Register.
And the fourth word is calibrate. To calibrate means to adjust something carefully to the right level or setting. For example, learning to calibrate your emotional language to the situation is a sign of real conversational fluency. Calibrate. One more time. Nuanced, validate,
Register. Calibrate.
and our 3 phrasal verbs for today.
The first is open up. To open up means to become more willing to share your feelings or thoughts. For example,
She found it easier to open up about how she was feeling once she trusted the person she was talking to.
The second is bottle up. To bottle something up means to keep your feelings inside without expressing them. For example, he had been bottling up his frustration for weeks, and eventually it came out in a difficult conversation.
And the third is come to terms with. To come to terms with something means to gradually accept a difficult situation or feeling. For example, it took her a long time to come to terms with the disappointment, but eventually she found a way forward.
Open up, bottle up, come to terms with.
All three are essential for talking about emotional experiences in English in a natural and mature way.
Time for shadowing. Listen to each sentence, pause, and then repeat it out loud with full voice and natural rhythm.
I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed lately, but I'm working through it.
Pause and repeat.
That sounds really difficult. I'm sorry to hear you've been going through that.
Pause and repeat.
She had been bottling up her feelings for so long that she didn't know where to start.
Pause and repeat.
It took him a long time to come to terms with what had happened, but he got there eventually.
Pause and repeat.
Learning to calibrate your emotional language is a sign of real conversational fluency.
Last one. Pause and repeat.
Excellent. You're building real depth and richness in your English every time you do this.
Now it's your turn.
2 questions today. Answer each one out loud, pausing the video when you're ready.
Question 1.
How have you been feeling lately? Try to use one word from the emotional spectrum we discussed today rather than just good or fine.
Pause now and answer out loud.
Question 2.
If a close friend told you they had been feeling very anxious recently, what would you say to them? Practice your response out loud now.
Pause and answer.
Here is an example answer for question 2.
I'd probably start by saying, I'm really glad you told me. That sounds like it's been really hard. I can imagine that kind of anxiety makes everything feel more difficult. Is there anything specific that's been triggering it, or does it just feel like a general heaviness? And I want you to know you don't have to go through it alone.
That response acknowledges first, validates the feeling, asks a gentle follow-up, and offers support without pressure. That's the complete picture.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe to the Maya and James podcast for new conversations every week.
And tell us in the comments, is there an emotion you find difficult to express in English? Tell us and we'll help you find the right words.
We read every comment and we genuinely love hearing from you.
Until next time, keep practicing.
Keep going.
Take care.